Good afternoon, ex-Winterview, back again with another brief dialogue of his dear friend, Annastacey. This brief dialogue, in some ways, is a part 3 of the Star Wars metaphor analogy thing. So inspired am I by this metaphor today. Perhaps I just like Star Wars. That is more likely. When we left off, the character, Luke Skywalker, trapped in the story, seemingly trapped. The only way Luke is really trapped is if we presume that he has a independent existence and there is some way for him to leave the movie, which there isn't. So it feels like he's trapped. But that feeling of being trapped revolves all around the conceptualization of the story, the character, progress, journey, inside, outside the story, liberation, before liberation, after liberation, and so on. That all creates the feeling of being trapped. And one of the last things I said in the previous dialogue was I was talking about the light. What is the light? The story in the Star Wars metaphor could unfold in numerous ways. We could say infinite ways. There's so many different facets that we could look at Luke Skywalker's life in the story. Really infinite. And wonder about it, and wonder about Luke, and what will happen to Luke, and what should Luke do, and so on and so forth. But what is this light in the analogy? What is the projector? The light is indescribable. It would be akin to the eye, your eyeball, being able to turn around and look upon itself. The eye looking at the eye, which as far as we know, has never happened. The eye cannot see the eye. But yet, there is the seeing. So that's the essential difficulty of exploring this awake awareness. It's that it's indescribable. But we know this awake awareness is. That's undeniable. Is it possible to turn, in some ways, away from the story, which could be a red herring, it could be a distraction, turn to the light? It's a hard question to answer because straight away the mind will refute that. Who will turn? Who or what would turn and face the light? It's an interesting question, but it's not such a difficulty, really. Let me go back a step. The conceptualization of the personal self I've talked about as being artificial or conceptual, and as a concept it has no independent existence, it has no power, it has no autonomy, it has no agency. But remembering at the same time that it does not exist. It just doesn't exist. So the idea that a person can or can't do something is a nonsense, is a fiction. So if I was to say, notice that awakeness just as a noticing exercise, the mind might refute it and say, yeah, but who's going to do that? Who's the person that's going to try and do that? And then some might say, yes, but if I do that, aren't I just reinforcing the belief that I can do something? The answer to that is that it won't be reinforced. The belief is already there. It's got plenty of reinforcers already, trust me, to sustain that belief. That's one way of answering that question. It's not going to make it worse, really. The other way to answer that is, yes, it's a good point. An imagined entity cannot do something as you ask. But that's entering into the model of the person as a person with agency, and suggesting it has agency. We don't know if this person has agency. It probably doesn't, because it's a concept. And so the idea that who's going to do it or what's going to do it becomes a conceptualized question, in a way. The other way to look at the whole problem, in effect, is that everything is concept. Everything that we talk about is conceptual. So we could just remain silent. And there are some who would argue that silence is the way to go, just be silent. But if you're saying just be silent, you're suggesting that there's some point or purpose to just being silent. And you're suggesting, conversely, that not being silent is problematic. So to raise problems about an activity is conceptual. I don't know if it's a problem. Is it a problem for a conceptual entity to take a look at their so-called consciousness or awareness itself, to look upon it? I don't know if that's a problem. The mind will report it as a problem and can come up with several good reasons why it's a problem. In fact, I just covered the main ones just then. The other way to look at it is that it's being asked right now. No person is asking. It's just being asked to look at this awareness, this aware awakeness. No one is asking, it's being asked. No one is hearing it. It's being heard. No one is looking at consciousness or awareness. Consciousness or awareness is being looked at. The mind, as you can no doubt tell, is a master at throwing up objections, refutations, and so on and so forth. No matter what idea or concept I provide to you, the mind can easily shoot it down in flames. It can easily do it, and I can easily shoot down your concepts. It's a game. We can shoot down endless concepts. I can provide more and more sophisticated models of understanding. But we now get a sense, perhaps, that no matter what model I throw up, no matter what description is used, no matter how much I say this is impersonal, it's not for the self, no matter how much I say don't worry about the conceptualized self, they're all models. You can't escape that. It can't be escaped. It's models upon models upon models, concepts upon concepts upon concepts, and so on. It's a morass. It's a jungle, a maze, a labyrinth, endlessly endlessly torturing, in a way, the mind. So we notice that the mind will readily seek out pathways in the labyrinth. Readily. Loves it, seemingly. Loves to do it. It's like a behavior of the mind to take a concept, turn it around and around and around, refute, agree, etc. and whatnot. It's a mind game. It's a total mind game. But the whole mind game is playing out in that awakeness. The mind game does not impact on the very awakeness itself. If we go back to the movie analogy, no matter what's happening on the screen in the movie, it has no impact on the light of the projector, or, if you prefer, on the screen itself. I prefer the projector. It has no impact on the light of the projector. The light of the projector just keeps endlessly lighting the screen, or illuminating the world, if you prefer that. And nothing that it projects affects it. It's true that a concept cannot turn and look into the light. It can't do it. No person can sit there and be mindful of the light, be mindful of consciousness, notice something. It's a fool's game. It's a fool's game. We don't know why it's all happening, except as we describe it in our concepts. It's a case too that the fact that this is even being said is a mystery. I don't know why this is being talked about now. I don't know to what end, if there is such a thing, that this is being said. There's no sense that this is a message for people. This is a directive for a person to hear and to do something about. This is seemingly the appearance in the movie trying to describe the movie as the movie unfolds. But so what, you know? There might be a sense on listening to this that the character X, Winterview, has something, has realized something. That character appears in the drama, or is presently appearing in the drama, has no idea about anything. That character doesn't know anything. That character is of average intelligence, maybe a little bit above average, let's concede that. Is handsome, probably, maybe a little bit above average, let's just concede that, you know, but more or less average. This is an average character. There's no special skills here in this character talking. This character is playing out the role of person talking about liberation from the movie. This character is playing that part. Kind of a guru character, if you like. This character could be egotistical. This character could become one of those so-called false gurus who demands money and control over followers, becomes unobtainable and secretive and kind of weird, wants to have sex with all the followers. It could become one of those gurus. Why not? But it doesn't affect the light. Nothing will impact on the light. No one's apparent story, no Luke Skywalker in the movie's journey has any impact on the light. No one's journey is more important somehow. No one's information in the story, in the movie, is more correct or worse than another's. It's just or the movie, so to speak. And all the while, there's the light. The mind is forever restless when it looks into the movie for something. The mind quietens, you might say, when all reference points are satisfied, when the story is, you could say, seen through, when the mind is still fixated on the personal self as a belief in the story. It's very restless. It's seeking, it's searching, and so on. The mind can, in the story, see through the story in perhaps a flash of inspiration, somehow, a glimpse of something else, somehow, and can, in that stunning moment, become silent, in some way, when awareness is awake to itself for an instant. It stuns the mind. It silences the mind. But no one did that. No one can cause that to happen. And it doesn't happen to a person, which is frustrating. And when it does happen, and the word "happen's" a funny one, but let's go with it. When it does happen, it's realized in that instant that nothing happened. It was always the case. It was just somehow overlooked, or wasn't noticed. It wasn't noticed. And there can be some rather profound changes on the person after that event, you might call it, in the story. There can be some shifts in the story, but all the while, everything is part of the story. The entire process was part of the story. Luke Skywalker was going along, went to the shops in the movie, suddenly fell silent for a second in the story on us. The mind was silent. Consciousness somehow became aware of consciousness for an instant in time, saw through it all, was like, oh. And then the character came back in and continued on. And even that point of realization is built into the story as well. It can't happen outside of the story. It can't happen outside of the movie. Which is really annoying. Really, it is. It seems to suggest that there's nothing you can do. But it's worse than that. It's that there's no one. It's worse than there's nothing you can do. It seems to suggest it, though. And so, hearing this is part of the movie. And seeking something after this is part of the movie as well. Hearing that it's the light is part of the movie. Seeking the light or not is part of the movie. The appearance or the movie, it just can't be escaped. It just cannot be escaped. All the descriptions of the light, of the projector in the movie analogy, are just descriptions. They're not prescriptions. They're not it's not pointing to something real. It's pointing to yet another story, another movie, in fact. it's devastating in a way. It's absolutely devastating for the character in the film now, who has heard about freedom from the movie in some way, or believes in freedom from the movie. It's absolutely devastating, that realization that there is no escape. It's utterly hopeless. Okay, once again, ex-Winterview leaving you on another high point with Tales of Woe. That's all for now. Comments are welcome.